Good morning. Today we have with us Dave Stezin with JEM Group, and he is going to talk about his personal experience with opioids and his family and extended family. Take it away.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is when it affects your family, you kind of take a step back a little bit and really consider what's going on. I mean, you hear about opioid use and the epidemic that it is in this state and in this nation. And you think, well, it hasn't affected me, or I've never really had to deal with, any of those types of situations. But I think when it hits your family, and you have to deal with a tragedy such as death, you take a step back and you really consider, what this is really all about.
Well, I think that's important to let people know that many situations it's kids get a hold of parents' painkillers in the past, and they're just looking to have some fun, and they share it with their friends, and it ends up being a disaster. And there's no plans for that. They just want to have a little fun, and I think it's important for parents and for teenagers to realize that this is no joke, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this affected me in the death of my nephew. He's the same age as my son, and they grew up together, doing a lot of things together, and we spent a lot of time with their family, and we had him over a lot to hang out with our son, and he was a big part of our life. And for him, it started out recreationally, as you said, having fun, just hanging out with his buddies, and got a hold of some of the pills, like you said, and it started to get a hold of him, and it got to the point where the pills weren't enough, and you have to up the ante, and eventually it ended up becoming a heroin addiction. And you don't realize going in, especially when you're a young kid and you think you have the ability to conquer anything, you don't realize the hold that it can eventually have on you. And I think for a lot of people, and especially those who are, recovering from some type of injury or some type of traumatic event where they're prescribed these, it's very easy to get addicted to them, because you think you need them more than they're helping you with the pain. So there's this little, there's kind of this idea in your head that if I don't have these, I'm not going to be able to function. And that can be real in many cases because of pain levels. But it gets to the point where I think you should be done with them. And maybe there is a little pain there, but I think it's to the point where most people could handle it. But yet they reach for the bottles of pills, and they think that that's what they need to continue to move forward in life. And, therapy and being able to talk with people about pain levels and management there is a big part of not becoming an addict. But I don't think people want to take it that seriously until they find out that they are an addict. And for some, it will escalate. But I think a big part of what the addiction is people who get into it recreational, who really don't need it, other than as an escape from reality, basically, into a world that kind of alleviates any of the real relative issues that affect your life every day. So, it starts recreationally. For my nephew, it was recreationally, and then it slowly escalated. And as it got a hold of him, then it did escalate to heroin use. because of the heroin use. Now, he did not overdose on heroin, but it led to him constantly fighting this. And part of the issue with opioids is it affects your brain in the areas where you don't have the ability just to shut it off. It's constantly a problem, and especially for heroin use. There are medications that help alleviate that need for it, but that need is always there. It's just, as we had discussed previous to this conversation, alcoholics struggle with alcoholism the rest of their life. And you often hear of people falling off the wagon. Well, it's the same for opioid use. You can fall back into it if you're not diligent about, doing the recommended steps to keep yourself level-headed and out of those issues. So, it's never easy. It's a constant battle, and I think it's something that a lot of people need to pay more attention to, especially if you've got acquaintances who are recovering from some type of traumatic event, which I had touched on previous, or an injury, where you are prescribed these and you feel like you start to just need the pills more than you really do, because your injury is starting to recover. And, part of what I've understood in talking with people, doctors and those in the healthcare industry, you're prescribed these medications to help alleviate the pain, and they do a job helping that for people. But you get to that point where you really shouldn't be using them anymore, but most people don't want to give them up. They feel that not having that pill they won't be able to get through the day. So that's where you start to see it become addictive. And, that's why we're in this crisis, so to speak, because people aren't looking at it that way. They get to the end of when they should be on that medication, but they still think they need that medication. And that's not always the case. So, yeah, there are some times, the design of these drugs, and I say the design because some of them are, they're not natural. They're enhanced medically. They change how your brain deals with pain and how your brain really relates to these drugs. And so there's an addictive quality to them that you just don't walk away from.
Yes, so there's the thing that I understand is there's always an underlying reason why people get addicted, whether it's because of injury, because of pain, or because of mental illness. And sometimes that's something that needs to be looked at too as well. Just not pain could probably cause that. I think that the stigma of not reaching out for help for some kind of anxiety medication or some kind of other medication is also a problem, but that's a whole nother topic. But there's what I'm trying to get at is this is a multi-layered problem, and we need to attack it from different angles.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no one cure-all for this. Each case is individual in nature because everybody's makeup is different. It's just, as with any medications, some people experience side effects, others don't with certain medications. So, how you relate to opioids and how I relate to opioids and how other people relate to opioids, it's all different. Some are easily addicted to them. Other people can take them and never have an issue with them. So it does have a lot to do with our makeup as an individual. And as you touched on, mental illness can play a big role in that. People who are, stressed out and anxious about life and don't have the ability to have something else to latch on to, go to the drugs as a help, so to speak, and a way to get through life. And it then becomes their crutch. And, if you're allowing yourself to be in a situation where you need the crutch like that, it's easy to pop a pill and that be your cure for that, whatever's ailing you at that time. And if it's mental, then, that's a big part of what these drugs do. It affects you mentally. So, yeah, I mean, having gone through this and having some education on it, looking at your own children and what their needs are and how to help them deal with points in their life where they may have an injury, where they may have trauma of some sort, where they may have a mental issue. There are other means to address those problems other than pills. So being able maybe to do some counseling, along with the management of opioids is a way, and let the doctor help them so that they're not thrown into this on their own thinking that, well, I got the pills on, I'll just keep popping those and I'll be fine. That's not what they were designed for. And like everything else, people will fall back on what is easiest for them. And a lot of times it's just a pop up pill. Pain is always an indication that there's something wrong. And whether it's, mental pain, whether it's some type of physical pain, it lets us know that, we need to address something. So, it's helpful to reach out to other people, whoever it is, somebody else who's working closely with you, your boss, somebody else in the company, maybe a mentor, and let them know, hey, I'm struggling. I've got opioids for this, that, or the other thing. I feel like I'm falling back on them more than just trying to deal with this through counseling and other means, so that they have another avenue instead of the pills or whatever it might be. And in my nephew's case, I don't think he saw all the signs of how desperately hurting he really was at this time. He had just lost his father 4 or 5 months before this all came to light, and it was really evident to us once we're looking back on it how devastating that affected him. So yeah, a loss like that is not something that a lot of people handle well, and he was one of them. And because of that, as I said, he didn't die of an overdose, but all that he was into with the heroin and the other types of opioids that he was doing, it led to his death. So yeah, I mean, it's you need to be aware of those things. You need to be asking. I feel it should have been something that I saw and should have been more evident to me, and just have a conversation with them. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? Because once you step back and you look at what was going on, you could see some of the signs, right? And people always feel like, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. And in this case, that's exactly how I felt. Would a conversation have kept this from happening? I don't know, but at least you had the conversation and you did something to reach out and help. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, especially in living in a society like we do, where you have neighbors and you have acquaintances and you work with other people. It is incumbent upon us to kind of maybe see how they're doing, occasionally ask them what's going on, how are they doing, especially if they've had some type of trauma in their life, loss of a loved one like this, or other injuries or whatever it might be, whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's never, I don't think there's that you can put everybody in one category. like I said, everybody's different. Their makeups are different. Everybody's going to be affected by things differently, especially with the effects of opioids on people.
That's a good point. I think it's interesting that most people think of opioid deaths because of overdose. And to your point, it could be many other things that cause a death. It could be an injury because they're unstable. It could be drowning. It could be many things that you didn't even think of, not just overdose. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, he unfortunately he was reaching out, trying to deal with things, and he ended up actually he had was trying to self-medicate with other types of medications and just kind of overdosed on Benadryl, and just lost control and fell down a bank and ended up face down in about 3 inches of water and ended up drowning in 3 inches of water. And you know, that's the saddest part of it all. I mean, 3 inches of water, you think, man, how does that happen? But it did. And when the autopsy report came back, it said he died of drowning. I mean, how does that happen? Especially in a case like this. But unfortunately, that's what did happen. And you know, opioids played a big part in bringing that inevitable end to his life. Now, he didn't overdose, like I said, but it did lead him down that path to where he was trying to self-medicate and do things. And he was trying to resist that temptation to go to heroin. But unfortunately, you know, he didn't reach out in a way that enabled him to really get the help that he needed at that point. And I think that happens with a lot of people who are experiencing, you know, an addiction like heroin or other opioid types. They don't realize the hold that it has on them until it's too late. And then it's a daily battle. It's not something that you just recover from and it's over. It is a daily struggle. These chemicals do affect the way that your brain functions. It chemically can alter how your brain functions. And so there is a change that happens in your chemical makeup in your brain that these opioids do. Because I said, they are synthetic. They're not just natural things that you find in our environment. I mean, they put all kinds of chemicals together to make these opioids. And a lot of them do change the makeup. Fentanyl is huge right now because of its addictive nature and what it does chemically. And it keeps your brain focused on that need for this drug or whatever it is you may be struggling with. So, you know, knowing that and understanding that can help people. Now, you can go to the other, we're, as humans, we're prone to, you know, going one way or the other, full blown one way or the other. And, you know, some people say, well, I'll never take an opioid because I'll get addicted. No, that's not the case. And if you work with your doctor closely, you know, that won't be the case. You know, they were created to help, and they do help, and they continue to help. But the problem is we go to the extreme because it's a problem. It's an epidemic now. Now you can't even get them prescribed from your doctor unless it's something really severe. So yeah, I mean, extremes are what we're all about. And, you know, we don't, because it's now a huge issue, the focus is on that. And so, like I said, doctors are, you know, they won't prescribe it as like they used to, which is good in some instances. But when you need them, you need them. They were designed, like I said, to help in certain situations. So being extreme doesn't help those who really do need them. So, you know, we walk this fine line throughout our lives of with everything really in our whole existence. and it's incumbent upon us to try to understand what we're getting into early on, so that we can make good rational judgments, not judgments when we're under the influence of these drugs. So yeah, it's important that we understand how they function and what they're prescribed for, and situations that they're needed in. So, you know, as a recreational drug, it's not something that you want to be getting into because of the addictive nature of them.
Well, Dave, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your story. It's very important to open up the stigma and have everyone that this is affected to talk about each other. And this is a good start, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, certainly. As I said, I think it's something we all need to be discussing. And you know, unfortunately in this situation it ended badly, but you know, getting the message out there can help others. And I think maybe we have the ability to keep it from happening on, you know, as it is every day in some instances. So yeah, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep, thank you. We'll see you.